for me as well, it's like karma or bad luck. If I don't do a certain thing, then something bad's going to happen. But for everyday people, when they say, "Oh, I'm OCD because I like things tidy," it's a bit like, yeah, but does it actually cause you so much stress that you can't do your job, or you can't go outside, or that's the difference. It's just actually like affecting your whole life if you don't do something. And it is very stressful to have to deal with, especially when you're going through a phase where something in your life has happened and it's triggered it off to an extent where you can't quite bring yourself down from it. And that would say there's the difference between like everyday people who like things tidy and your whole family's going to burn down in a fire if you don't do a certain thing.
Hello everyone and welcome back to another episode of the podcast. Today I am joined by Millie, and Millie is also another member of the business developing group Supercharge that I'm part of. She's one of the amazing coaches in there, and it's continuing the adventure of getting on podcast episodes with these like-minded individuals, which has just been so rewarding. So welcome to the podcast today, Millie.
Thank you for having me.
Honestly, it's not a problem at all. We spoke before, and something that we're both very passionate about, and I want to really go into detail with you, is mental health. You opened up and said that you have suffered and do suffer with OCD, and I thought that it would be really interesting to dig a little bit there, if that's okay.
Yeah, absolutely. Fully open to discussion about all those things. Especially, I think it's this month as well is Mental Health Month for men as well, which is quite interesting. So,
Movember.
Yeah, why not? Good topic. Yeah.
It's very fitting of the times. Okay, so
Definitely.
What I thought was really interesting, and I might be being completely ignorant here, so correct me if I'm wrong, is lots of people are perfectly aware of the negatives of OCD. And I'm hesitant to say there's positives, but just explain how your OCD manifests, and then give us a bit of context there.
Yeah, so I've suffered from OCD, I'd say, from maybe I remember it when I was about 9 years old. And it's come in sort of waves and stuff of different ways of it appearing. But it's mostly checking behaviour that I checking stuff, and it'll be like if I don't do a certain thing, something bad's going to happen. So mine's quite strange. I would think it was quite strange because it's to do with shutting things, like shutting drawers, shutting cupboards, doors. I have to be thinking about certain things when I'm shutting stuff. And then it's also body checking as well. So I can that can appear sometimes with like constantly checking myself with more health, like health concerns, like catastrophizing. If I see like a mole or something on my body, I'm like, is it cancer? That type of thing. So that's it. Just it comes in waves. So throughout my life, it's different types of checking. I'd say, yeah. So yeah, it's on and off. It comes out in times of stress. Mostly in like life events happening, then it will come out a bit more than others. But for the most part, I've learned to manage it through cognitive behavioural therapy, and still having counselling as well, just to keep check and being conscious of what it is and recognising it when it comes out for what it is. So yeah, just managing it really.
That's interesting. And suddenly as you were explaining it then, I was very aware that I didn't really know what causes OCD, because it's a compulsive disorder. Is it trauma based? Is it, you're kind of or like it's environment, or is it, you're born with it and it's almost like a, for want of a better terminology, like a brain defect?
Possibly. I think it potentially is a little bit of both. So I've noticed it in my dad. I think my dad recognises it more where I've got it from him and his behaviours and stuff. So I think there's elements of anxiety within his sort of life that he feels probably sometimes I've got it from him, whereas I think it's a mixture of nature nurture, and I think some people are probably just a little bit more predisposed, I suppose, to get those things. But yeah, I can't pinpoint an event that happened that kind of triggered it. Because it was school age, sort of year, what was it? Sort of year 5. That's when I had to, everything had to be perfect. My hair had to be spot on. Like there had to be no lumps or bumps in my hair in a bun. And I got so bad at one point that I had sores around my hairline where it was just like destroying my hair from trying to be so perfect all the time. And then I think my mum recognised it, and that kind of calmed down a bit. But yeah, it's hard to pinpoint a certain time or place where something traumatic happened that triggered it.
So you mentioned as well in that little explanation about your dad feeling a certain amount of anxiety within his life. Now, there's a very definite difference between anxiety and OCD. Where is that line between, okay, I'm a little bit anxious to now this is a completely compulsive thing?
Oh, yeah. It's a tricky one because I think sometimes it's probably the anxiety happens first and then the control of the OCD comes in. So you're feeling a bit anxious about something or something's got you down, and then the control of the obsessions come in to somehow try and manage the anxiety, I expect. But I've never really looked at it in much detail, but I think from what I understand, there's a lot of children that do suffer from anxiety, and OCD is quite common as well. So I'm not sure if there's, for me, there's definitely a link there, because I know when I'm feeling anxious, I can recognise my OCD starting to come in. But in my dad, I haven't really noticed any OCD. But definitely he will stop himself from doing things because of disappointment. So he will restrict, like he'll buy something new and not wear it because when he wears it, it will just be disappointing, which is a bit bizarre. I don't know if that's to do with anxiety or what, but he's very like interesting. Let's say, yeah, doesn't like change. Yeah.
So how do you think that, in fact, before we move on from that, can you give me like an example? You said that yours manifests in kind of closing things. And I think that it's an important distinction to make, because so many people, you hear it on a daily basis almost, or a weekly basis in their vernacular of, oh, I'm a little bit OCD. What is the difference between a little bit OCD and actual, like, for example, you can only speak for yourself, but how does that manifest for you, the actual OCD behavior?
Yeah, and this always triggers me when people are like, I'm OCD because I just like things really tidy, and I like things like even, like, or I like things clean. But it's not. I mean, like you wouldn't think that one of your loved ones is going to die or something really bad is going to happen if you don't do a certain thing, and it causes you so much stress, and it is an obsession to actually like do it. It's, for me as well, it's like karma or bad luck. If I don't do a certain thing, then something bad's going to happen. But for everyday people, when they say, oh, I'm OCD because I like things tidy, it's a bit like, yeah, but does it actually cause you so much stress that you can't do your job, or you can't go outside, or, that's the difference. It's just actually like affecting your whole life if you don't do something. And it is very stressful to have to deal with, especially when you're going through a phase where something in your life has happened and it's triggered it off to an extent where you can't quite bring yourself down from it. that would say there's a difference between like everyday people who like things tidy and your whole family's going to burn down in a fire if you don't do a certain thing.
Wow.
I'd say, yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
That's what I used to think about when I was a kid. Like the whole house is going to burn down if I don't do something.
Well, that is certainly anxiety provoking, and I suppose it makes complete logical sense. Like, psychology is not my background, it's not my expertise, but from a position of extreme anxiety, I suppose the next best coping mechanism that relates to me would be control of that environment. And if said behavior makes that anxiety go away, I mean, I can understand why that's kind of developed, and it does develop in lots of people, I think. But it's an interesting point. I've never really thought about it in any detail until you've given me that kind of context. So yeah, it's very, very interesting.
Yeah. It's fascinating, I think, for a lot of people with OCD. I was watching like OCD programs, and it's like if you talk to someone who's actually got OCD, what their compulsions are, they're always quite different. So yeah, it's a sort of spectrum of obsessions.
So you've just twigged an idea in my head there. Or in your experience, the people that you've been in contact with, or the people that you're aware of that do have OCD, are their phobias all fairly similar, or are they as widely spread as the behaviors that manifest and control the anxiety?
I guess behaviors are quite similar. Obsessions. Do you mean like? How would you mean it?
So like you said that you were worried, for example, as a child, that your house was going to burn down and your family was going to perish, like whatever the thought was. Have you noticed any common like thought processes there, or are those just as varied as the behaviors might be?
I think it's probably similar. It's a lot of like something bad will happen. Like if you don't do a certain thing, you're gonna lose. Like I think it's quite common in footballers. If they don't do a certain ritual before the match, they're not going to win. So yeah, rituals. But yeah, it's a lot of something bad will happen. Irrational. It's totally irrational thoughts if you don't do something. And sometimes you have to force yourself to do that and remember that, you did that before and nothing bad happened, which is a bit weird because you're constantly focusing on, well, if I don't do that, then that will happen anyway. Or, just trying to remember, well, I don't have control over that. So if it happens, it happens. It's not me that's caused it.
And you mentioned briefly as well that you've been doing CBT to help with that. What kind of, when you're really triggered and you're starting to feel those things arise within you, what do you do? How does that practice come into play?
Well, originally, there are a lot of techniques that you can use. It's been quite a while. It's probably been about 10 years since I've had CBT. So I've been managing it myself a little bit better. I had a lot of negative thoughts occurring. So what I found really helpful was to have a little positive book. So it helps you then focus on more of the positive things. So every day you would write down in your book one positive thing that happened, or however many positive things that happen. That can be just as small as someone held the door open for you, or I got given a free coffee at Pret. It's just like random, like really tiny things, or someone said your dress looked nice, and then it switches your mindset to then look out for the positive so that you can write them in your book rather than focusing on the negative stuff all of the time. So that really helped. And also just actually recognizing it, because I have those thoughts of, it'd be unlucky if I don't do this. And then shit, my OCD is coming back. So I just kind of self-check myself to be a bit conscious of it rather than letting myself run away with those thoughts, and recognize it for what it is these days.
There's so much.
But unless there's so much.
The more that I'm speaking to people, the more I really recognize that self-awareness is the most important quality and trait that we can have, because we all have like the worst self-talk. It doesn't matter who you are. If you're the most positive person on the planet, you still have that inner critic. And obviously the variant of how critical that person is and how harsh that person is within you is obviously very, very different depending on the individual. But the more I've done my own self-work and therapy myself and, you know, spoke to people, it strikes me as the most important thing that we can do as humans is just be more self-aware about our behaviors, our environment, and just everything. Just have an awareness of just the general consensus of our thoughts, because we just aren't our thoughts. You know, everybody is perfectly capable of having any thought at any time, but that doesn't necessarily make it a reality or the truth.
Yeah, thoughts aren't things. I heard thoughts are not they're not reality, and we are so horrible to ourselves. I see it a lot with my clients. Generally, when they're filling out their feedback forms, they can be quite negative. And you can see sometimes they've actually had a really, really positive week, but they just need someone else to look through and pull out those bits. But you just can't see it when you're in it.
Yeah, definitely.
But being self-aware is really important in this day and age, especially like in this industry where you're constantly comparing yourself to others. You need to just be mindful of, like, your chapter 1 is not, you know, your chapter 1, you're comparing your chapter 1 to someone else's chapter 10. So just be mindful of that. Like, you're not, just check it, really. Yeah.
I think awareness is incredible, because you mentioned that you used to write just all your positive experiences, positive thoughts, those sorts of things, and it does retrain your brain. There's a name for that system that the brain uses, I believe, and I'm really sorry if I've got this wrong. It's called the reticular activation system or something along those lines. And it's, for anyone listening or watching, this can be best explained where you get a new car or you get a new book and you get something that you've not seen before. And then as soon as you get it, you notice it everywhere. And like, that is the same sort of example that I love, that you actually use that through CBT. And that's an incredible thing, because it massively retrains the brain.
Yeah, it was always there before, but you never saw it. There was always things just by pointing those things out to you. Like now I see everywhere I look, I see, I've been doing a lot of form videos on Instagram, and since I've started doing them, I feel like that's all I see. Like other people doing them, I'm like, wonder where you got that idea from. But it's just probably, like you say, I'm just now, people were always doing it, and I'm just recognizing it more.
So that let's go back to the OCD. I mean, that must have been incredibly taxing on your own mental health.
Yeah, it's just stressful all the time, just constantly stressed. And that's kind of how I got into fitness originally, is just because I wasn't feeling very good about myself generally in body image wise, because I did suffer from a bit of body dysmorphia. So I got into the gym, and the more I went, it started off from an aesthetic point of view to look better, but then the more I did it, I found the mental health benefits far greater in helping me cope with all of my anxieties. And like the rest is history. Here I am 10 years later, and I've made it my job to teach people how to lift weights in the gym, and hopefully make them feel better about themselves and manage their stress a lot better.
So you started, it's fascinating for me. I love hearing people's fitness journeys, how they started, because for me, it sounds very similar, but obviously completely different road to entry. But mine was, I was very skinny, had no confidence, no self-esteem. I was very good at sports. I just didn't have the athletic build. Like, I was a late bloomer, like it was what it was. So where you said that you started for aesthetics, like, can you talk me through your, I suppose, self-talk, how the gym kind of helped to change that, and then your kind of feelings as you got through it.
Yeah, so I think I went on a girls' holiday, and one of my friends took a picture of me. This was not long after I split up from my ex-boyfriend, and we were all on holiday together. She took a picture of me, and I just looked at it and I was like, oh, those fat rolls, I need to go to the gym. So as soon as I could afford to get a gym membership, I went down. There was a local bodybuilding gym. And I was so intimidated. I was 24 and had to take my dad with me to just hold my hand so I could sign up. And I went for a little bit, and then I was like, I really quite enjoy this, but I want to know how to lift properly. So I got a personal trainer there, and I don't know. I've never really thought about it that much, but I suppose going to work and then coming home and doing nothing was probably really bad for my mental health, because you have nothing, like there's no hobby or anything going on. So to work a little bit on myself and start seeing myself improve, and then you get feedback from other people, they think you're strong. Oh, it's funny actually, there was a woman I worked with who did Tough Mudder. So, and I was like, oh, I had a bit of a girl crush on her, and I was like, oh, I want to be like her. So I signed up to do Tough Mudder, and I did that. And for me, it's always like, I didn't really do that well, so I want to do it again, but better. So I did it again. And then just like the more consistent I got, the more I kind of developed physically, and just had more confidence in myself in terms of like just the actual physical feeling of being strong made me mentally strong as well, and just being able to cope with life better because I was fitter. And then where did I go from there? I just got into Barry's boot camp and doing that when I moved to London, and I quite realised soon that I wasn't getting any results from it because I was just pounding my body with stress. Moved into a gym after that and just started training with a trainer there, and just really fell in love with it. So a few years later, qualified as personal trainer, and then transitioned online recently as well. So that's kind of my journey, and it's lovely to see the people that I've worked with get the same benefits out of it, and getting stronger, and then watching their lives improve, like their work life, their social lives, just confidence, all of that just radiates through from just being physically stronger, which is weird but great.
Yeah, that was great, thank you. I think one thing that you said that I really agree with so passionately, it cannot be said enough, is people aren't working on themselves. People aren't doing things for themselves. And I get it. I understand it because, life is busy, but we're always focusing on other people. And yet we're not investing on ourselves, whether that's just time, whether that's going to the gym, whether it's doing a hobby that you enjoy. Like, we've got into this rat race kind of cycle where, we get up, go to work, come back, have food, chill out in front of the TV. And like, that is, honestly, if that fulfills you, that's also fine. Like, I'm not trying to berate anyone for their life choices. Whatever fulfills you. But if you're aiming for something and you're trying to challenge yourself, and the gym for me is a perfect analogy for life, as cliche and as cheesy as it is. Like, life is hard. Like, it is hard. Like, it's not fair. Shit happens to people. Shit happens to you. It happens to people that you love. Life events happen. Work events happen. Stress. And I think the one thing that I took away from when I first started the gym was that resilience of, oh my God, like, I don't know if I can do another rep, or I don't know if I can do the next weight up, to then doing it and being like, oh, actually, I'd created this whole kind of state of anxiety before I'd touched this, before I'd even tried it to see how hard it was. I just assumed that I wouldn't be able to do it. And actually I got over that. I did that. And I think it gave me kind of the starting blocks to developing much more of a growth mindset, much more of being able to go through shit as an adult. And, you know, and I think that it's obviously for me, that was the gym and sports, but there's lots of different things. You know, you could get that through books, you could get that through chess, you could get through anything. And I think that if you have a primary focus outside, I read recently that you should, like someone said that you should have 3 different hobbies. One that obviously works on your fitness, one that works on making money, and one that, you know, you just enjoy as a pastime.
Yeah, mine's like all 3 in one.
Yeah.
How can you make like all 3 in one? Actually working out, helping people to work out. What was the other one? Yeah, but it's pretty much, yeah, it's just consuming. Yeah, just doing all the 3 of them. But yeah, it's so true. Like you just see so many people, they're constantly giving to other people and not really doing anything for themselves. And it gets to like 10, 20 years down the line, and as soon as they're old, it's like, what have you look back and all you've done is pleased other people and not yourself. What have you got to show for it? Mm-hmm. Whereas like you want to be able to get up out of a chair when you're 70, 80. And so I think it's not just from an aesthetic point of view, you should still be able to like function as a human as we're getting older, and we're like living to 100 these days. So yeah, you need to be able to look after yourself. And if you're not doing that, then how can you possibly give like 100% to your family? Mm-hmm. One of my friends is a mum, and she works out as well, and I think it makes her a better mum because it keeps her happy, keeps her fit and healthy, so she's able to give so much more to her children. Whereas if she was just doing that, she'd be constantly drained, so that the actual time that she spent with her children wouldn't be of any quality. That's just my opinion. I'm sure there might be different, but
I think as well that you are much less likely to resent people. You know, if you're focusing on yourself, you're fueling yourself, you're filling that cup up before pouring it into other people. You ultimately can best serve others as well as serving yourself. If your cup is constantly empty and you're only ever giving out to other people, that is a one-way trip to misery, in my opinion. And I think that fitness is this kind of weird area where people feel like they have to enjoy it. And I would argue that it's just a necessity. You know, we've gotten ourselves in an environment now, in a society, because of the amount of technology that we have, that our lives are just inactive now. So, you know, in order to counteract that, you need to be active. You need to be walking. You need to, if you can, you need to be doing whatever you can. It doesn't mean you need to be going to the gym 7 days a week, but, you know, if you're in an office all day, every day, and let's say you're living in London, you're living the typical life, you might be working 12 hours, you might be commuting an hour a day on top of that. Like, you know, how many steps are you getting in? If that's all you can like control, fine. But, you know, we and you mentioned it, so many people still think that fitness is just about aesthetics and it's just surface level. Now, don't get me wrong, I got into the gym for aesthetics, like I definitely did. But it goes beyond that.
A lot of us do,
Yeah, it goes beyond that. We've got, you know, if we look at the actual benefits of it, it's just mind-blowing. You know, you've got reduced rates of anxiety and depression. You've got reduced cardiovascular diseases. You've got lower blood pressure. Obviously, you've got increased muscle mass and then the increased bone density. But the list of benefits from just going to the gym and lifting weights a few times a week is unbelievable. And yet
people are like, sorry.
No, go on.
But people will say to me, oh yeah, I don't want to get more. I want to get worse. So they come to you with an injury or anything, but I want to train, but I don't want you to make me worse. But the risks of not doing anything are far greater than actually going to the gym and lifting weights. I've had people that have come to me in pain, and all they just needed to do was have a well-rounded program that actually strengthened their body and reduced the pain elsewhere. And if that's all it is, then that's fantastic. Like, change someone's life.
Yeah,
you can't put a price on that.
Quality of life is the biggest thing. I mean, how many times have you had a client come to you and they've got like a weak lower back and they don't know it's a weak lower back or weak glutes? They think that they come with a bad back or as long as there's no actual bone issue, and then you just put them through a basic program that strengthens their glutes, strengthens their core, and they're like, oh my god, like I'm having no issue now. Like, you're a genius. And like, you're just like, well, actually, I'm not. I'll take the compliment, but
Yeah. Yeah. No, it's so rewarding though. Like to have those people, like they'll say that, oh, you changed my life. And it's like, yeah, I just did a bit of this and a bit of that. That's all you needed really. You just needed to strengthen your weak areas. And you're good to go. But it does massively improve. Like, she just wanted to be able to sort of do her gardening and then not be in pain after. Just have the strength to trim your bush.
Okay, come on now.
Yeah. Well, yeah. Whatever you need to do.
That's completely thrown me. I'm not going to lie.
Sorry. Next question.
Immature sense of humour. Okay, so you mentioned that you started off, you didn't have much confidence, and in the journey of that, I know now that you've competed, you've stepped on stage, and that's a big transition, to go from zero confidence to standing on stage in front of a few hundred people in a tiny bikini. How did that happen?
It was something in the back of my head that I always kind of wanted to do, but never felt like good enough. So I was always making excuses like, they're always miserable, these bodybuilders, they're always miserable. I don't want to do it. But really I was like, I probably can't do it. That's why. And then it was after lockdown when I'd moved back home and I was PTing back then, and I started PTing back at the original gym that I joined when I first ever joined the gym. And a few people encouraged me then. They were like, you should, like, you've got a good frame, you've got a good physique, like, you should do it. And I was like, okay, all right then, I'll do it. So I did it. And it actually increased my confidence, I think, because it was something that I never thought I could do. I just probably needed a little bit of a push in the right direction. And yeah, I did throughout think, I don't know if I'm good enough, or you do have a lot of self-doubt. I think it's normal, especially on prep, to doubt yourself. But once you get up on stage and you're in all your makeup, you're the best you've ever looked, your hair's done, you've got your heels on, and you're up there posing, it's like you're not even the same. It's not you.
Yeah.
It's like you're Beyonce and her like Sasha Fierce. You're just a different persona. And then you're absolutely buzzing from it because it's an extreme sport. It's like not everyone can do it or everyone wants to do it. But it did massively increase my confidence. Like, if you can do that, step up on stage half naked, like mahogany brown, and do a weird posing routine, I think you can do anything.
It's it's one of those things, weird, isn't it? That I mean, I remember when I was competing back in the day, and I got my tan, and I'd forgotten that you need to wear really loose clothing afterwards. So I had this T-shirt that was way too tight, something similar to what I'm wearing now, and I literally had to take it off. Obviously, I couldn't put it back on. So I was like walking down like the street somewhere in London, like just like completely mahogany brown,
so brown,
with like flip flops on and just like the baggiest trousers you can imagine. Yeah. And I just remember like
at least you had trousers on.
Yeah, I mean, I would like walk past a few guys that were like stood outside the pub, and I swear down, they were just like, they just right. were like, what is? It looked like an Oompa Loompa. They were like, I'm sure.
Yeah,
it's definitely gone around a few.
No, I had. Chats. Yeah, I had to. The last show that I did, I got my top coat done, and then when you go to the toilet, you've got to be really careful you don't drip or anything. So
Hmm.
I dripped, and then I had to go and get another top coat, and then you go back and get your glaze put on. So by this time, I already had two coats on because they touched me up, and then I went to get the glaze and slid over, and I had to then go and get another top coat. So I
Oh
had three
no.
top coats and then the glaze. And the judge's feedback was like, "Tan's a bit too dark." And I was like, "Yeah, no shit." I've just had three top coats on there, mate.
That's funny.
But yeah, just be careful, girls, with weeing and slipping over if you are
Yeah.
competing.
It's the behind the scenes of competing is not a very glamorous world, actually. Like when you see it from the
No,
surface of, see people on stage, the tanning really isn't spoken about enough, I think. I mean, the first time I got
yeah.
handed that sock, I was like, I was such an idiot. And I was just ignorant. I almost went to put it on my foot and I was like, hold on a sec, there's only one here. And I was like, ah, it dawned on
uh,
me. It dawned on me very quickly, and I was like, "What have I signed up for here? Like, this is my first
yeah, it
experience.
was so
I'm
weird.
I'm now in a room with 90 guys, and we're all naked in a freezing cold environment because there's so many fans." And I was just like,
Yeah,
"I'm not. This is
it's
not what
so
I was
weird.
expecting
Yeah,
at
in a
all."
way, that's kind of like It's one of the best bits I find because when you go, not like from a weird perverted point of view, but as a girl, when you go in to get your tan, that's when you see everyone um, who you're competing against.
Hmm.
So you can kind of that's the first time you get to see what you're up against. And you could try not to look because everyone's naked and it's really awkward, but you want to look, but you can't
Yeah.
look. So it's kind of like nice. And you're like, that's remember when I first competed, and when went to get my base coat done, I was like, oh, actually, I might do quite well. So it's interesting. It's so weird though. Yeah, just
Yeah.
completely naked with a hairnet on, like airing yourself. Yeah, it's weird. And everyone stinks as well because you can't use deodorant when you can't
Yeah.
shower.
And the
So on
tan
the
smells
day,
like
everyone
cookies as
stinks.
well.
Yeah, it's so like I don't know. It's all got up your nose as well. Yeah, everywhere. It gets everywhere.
You got to
But
take
it's a
bedding as
yeah
well,
fun day.
otherwise you get told off by hotels. Like the prep
Yeah,
that goes into competing it goes way beyond the diet and training. That was the take home for me when I was competing all those years ago.
yeah. It's definitely an experience. That's for sure.
Hmm. So
I'm sure there are
obviously
probably yeah.
you're now what? How many weeks after your comp are you?
Oh, it's probably must be 9. It was the end of August, that August
Hmm.
bank holiday. So, um, yeah, a couple of months. Yeah, slowly getting back. It's taken me a long time this time round to get back to normal.
Hmm.
Weirdly, I think because we'd had COVID, so we were all locked down and restricted, and then post COVID, I I sort of not much was open, so you couldn't really socialize. You couldn't go out for meals and stuff. So then I got into competing, and then all of the restrictions from that came in. So I wasn't really going out for meals. I wasn't going out with my friends so much,
Hmm.
um, because I was on a controlled diet. So it became easier to avoid those things and to do it. And now that I'm on the other side and I'm decided that I'm not going to compete, or never say never, but it's not in my plans currently to compete again.
Hmm.
So I'm trying to adjust to normal life again, uh, without a goal, which is a bit weird because I've constantly had this goal and I've constantly been restricted. I haven't
Yeah.
had much of a social life. So it's a weird adjustment. Also, gaining weight has been quite uncomfortable.
Hmm.
Um, when you spent so much time losing weight, but then I know it's healthy and you should be gaining weight, but it's very hard to process, that
Yeah.
on the other side with no end goal of like competing again.
Yeah. It's one of
So
the
it's
reasons
yeah,
why
it's
I
just
stopped as well. I stopped competing. I competed for 4 years. Um, I know my last competition was in 2016, which is a long time ago now. And I just recognized that all that I was working for, which is fine, like at the time, that was my goal. I was working towards a competition. Then when I didn't have the competition, that post-competition blues kicked in, and I was just like, well, what am I, like, it was bizarre, the mindset that, or the headspace I got into, and I think quite a lot of people fall into it, is, well, what am I actually training for now? Like, the whole ethos and reason behind me going to the gym initially had just disappeared, because I'd attached this now, I suppose, egotistical goal of, I wanted to get as lead as possible. There's the competition element, which for me is a bit of a nightmare because I'm ridiculously competitive. So I always want to do as well as possible, which also meant that I went to the extreme with prep, was really, really strict, like did more training, more cardio than I thought, because I wanted to, quote unquote, do more than anyone else, those sorts of things. And then I'll be honest, like after competitions, because I was so strict and because I was so extreme with everything, I ended up just not having a good relationship with food at all.
Yeah. Did you ever have a poor relationship before you ever prepped? No, same. Yeah, you just become so focused on food.
And
it
image.
just becomes yeah. And never really experienced that before I ever competed.
Mm-hmm. I had self-esteem issues on the way that I looked before I started going to the gym, and I was skinny and I wanted to look more muscular and I wanted to have that sort of body image. But then I got to the point where I wouldn't post photos of myself in like the off season, because I was just like, ugh. Like I'd see them and I'd be like, nah, I don't want to post that. Like I'm a coach, I'm a trainer. Like people are like expecting me to look a certain way, and it was all internal monologue. Like no one said like, Dan, Jesus Christ, like you're out of shape. And I just found that for me, I needed to step away. I needed to work on that, and I needed to make sure that I was in a much more healthy headspace, and being productive with business as well. So that's kind of where I just drew the line in the sand and was like, no, I'm done with this. I need to focus on me again. We're back. A little bit of a technical issue there, but it's all rectified now. We were discussing the post-competition kind of relationship with food. Mine was really bad at one point. I remember one of the competitions I did, I just went next level. Like I was dieting for way too long. I think I dieted for like 7 or 8 months because I had like some photo shoots off the back of my competing season. So I just felt I hated training by that point. Like it wasn't even just like, oh, I'm not enjoying this. I was just like, I don't want to be doing this. I just kept turning up and ticking the boxes off. I was doing way too much cardio. And I remember my girlfriend at the time bought me a white chocolate Toblerone because it was the new thing. And I literally got back from work, from the gym, opened up this Toblerone and like just took like the first triangle off, like ate that, like just taking in the smell, taking in the taste. I was just in heaven. I was like, this is incredible. But then very quickly it turned into something a little bit more sinister, because I suddenly realized that I'd had the second triangle and then the third triangle and the fourth triangle. And I'm not joking, I had the whole Toblerone in probably 10, 15 minutes. And the worst bit about it was I remember I was consciously aware and I was like, Dan, why are you still eating this? Like as I was putting it into my mouth. And it was a great, although it was a terrible experience, because that then continued for about a month after that competition. I'm actually really grateful that I've gone through that kind of process, because it's allowed me to understand clients so much better. Because obviously from that position, like I've kind of experienced something that they struggle with. If they have it's not as simple as sometimes, we'll just stop eating junk. If someone's extremely obese, they might be using food for a coping mechanism. I mean, you don't even have to be obese to use that as a coping mechanism. Lots of people use food to regulate their happiness. And
Yeah.
it was just a really bizarre experience for me. What kind of happened to you after your competition? Because you mentioned as well that you were getting back to normal.
Yeah, it was a really weird adjustment period, I think. I did binge, not to the point where I was throwing it back up or anything.
Mm-hmm.
But there were occasions like, because you've been restricted for such a long time, and you're cutting out regular stuff like cereal or pita bread or anything that you just haven't had the taste for it in a while. And as soon as you get that taste, like the whole box of cereal's gone. It's just like,
Yeah.
you're like, how the hell did I do that? You can't stop because your body is just craving feeding, just wants to gain body fat so fast. So I
Mm-hmm.
really did struggle. Like, I'd gone from one coach who had me on meal plans to then going to another coach who had me flexible dieting. So even with the flexible dieting, I haven't tasted these flavors for such a long time, and you just get one taste for it, and you're like, wow, it's just amazing. And then before you know it, you've eaten a whole packet of something, and your hunger signals are all just cocked up. So you eat past the point where you're full to the point where you're just completely, you can't move and you're in
Mm-hmm.
pain.
Mm-hmm.
So it did take a little while this time to ease out of that, and I feel like I'm still hungry all the time. But then I've always had a big appetite, so that makes you think, oh, maybe I just always have a big appetite. But yeah, I went on an all-inclusive holiday as well, and that was like mental torture to
Mm-hmm.
just not be able to track anything and then want to overeat all the time. I thought I'll come back like 5 kilos heavier. Turns out I was only 1 kilo heavier, not even 1 kilo, because I was just like in the battle in my head. Um, yeah, just try not to overeat.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, it's still a struggle to not overeat. I've gained back probably 13 kilos now, so I'm back to like a healthier weight. Um, but yeah, I find going out for meals as well quite hard because I'm not used to it, and you know the calorie content of everything now. It feels a bit like it causes a bit of anxiety
Mm-hmm.
to eat that stuff when you should be able to go out and eat nice things and spend time with your family and friends. So it is hard, I think, and people don't probably realise that when they're competing and coming out the other side, or when they're thinking about competing,
Mm.
how you really do have to think carefully about it. Even if you haven't had any eating disorders in the past, it can trigger something off in you to then have one.
Oh, definitely.
Yeah.
And for me, I think it comes down to a little bit of perfectionism. And I see it in my clients all the time. Everybody is so focused on what they're not doing, they don't necessarily have an awareness of what they are doing. So, for an example, I had a client, or I still have the client, but last 2 weeks ago, she checked in. She's torn her hamstring in a dancing related
Mm.
incident, and old her would not have been able to tick all the boxes, would have gone into self-destructive behaviors, would have, ate a ton of food, would have gone, drunk lots of stuff, and just not managed in any efficient way. And yet at the end, like as you said earlier, at the end of her check-in, I always ask people, what's gone well? Like, what 2 or 3 things are you happy with this week? And she just put nothing. And then on my
Oh,
video response back, I was like, listen, look, just take a second. Let's reflect on your week. Like, you've had a massive injury, yet you've still stayed on track with absolutely everything else. And yeah, fine. I'm not saying that we should belittle how you feel about the fact that you've torn your hamstring or you've injured yourself, but ultimately, look at what you've actually accomplished this week. In an environment where most people would, sit down and just be like, use that as an enabling message to just not do anything that week. And then they'd feel bad about it. So then they're going to eat food. They're going to get way way over their calorie target, because the foods that we all choose when we're feeling low, they're not nutrient dense, they're not low calorie. You know, for me, it's your stereotypical like ice cream, snacky foods. Like I'll put a movie on like that. That's kind of my go-to. And you know, you could easily smash 1,000, 2,000, 3,000 calories in one of those things. And I said to her, I was like,
Yeah.
look, you know, you haven't done that. You've stuck at it, and you've actually controlled what is controllable this week.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. And that's the benefits of having a coach as well, to point those things out for you and also keep you accountable, because your role within that probably also helped in stopping her from going over the top, because she's got you to answer to at the end of the week if she had have done.
Mm. Yeah, I agree. And something that I love as well is I've been a massive proponent of flexible dieting, like macro tracking, as opposed to meal plans for years. And it stems again from my own experience of meal plans. My first ever experience of dieting was just, now looking back on it, just a horrendous experience. I remember my first competition, I had about 6 months of diet for it. And then about 4 months out, I was basically carb free. I was just eating like pure protein and just broccoli. And yeah, it was real old school. And to be honest, I don't want a bad name like the coach, because ultimately that's what he was doing himself. And, you know, that's fine. It worked. But, you know, looking back on it, it was not good, because I just ended up eating like 4 or 5 meals of exactly the same thing. It was, you know, even stuff like as you said, bread was off the table. That was a big no. And then pretty much any carb bar sweet potato was banned. It was just
Do you eat a lot of
nuts.
cod?
Yeah, a lot of white fish.
Cod, yeah.
No rice cakes, but I did eat a lot of white fish.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think that the moment that it all clicked for me, flexible dieting, was because I kind of, for a long time, I understood the science, but I was like, there's no way in my like brain that I was thinking calories can't just be calories. Like, surely there's no way that if we stick to 2,000 calories of like nutrient dense foods, and then we consume the same quantity in bad foods, we'd still look the same way, as long as the protein's met and those sorts of things. And I just thought, one time I was going on holiday with a bunch of friends to California. We were going to LA, we were going to Venice Beach, and like we were going to hit Gold's Gym. So it was like a real cool situation. And I was like, I don't want to mess up my eating behaviors again, like, because that was like, it was bad for like a month. And I just thought, I was like, okay, fine. I'm just going to track my macros, track my calories, and just do a little experiment on myself. And it was the best shape I ever got into, even with competing. It was the leanest I've ever got. It was the most, like, the fullest I ever was in terms of muscle bellies. I was strong. I had a lot of energy. I didn't even really feel like I was dieting, because during that time, work was really busy for me as well. So to be honest with you, although I don't recommend it, I was, at the end of the day, some days I was just like smashing down a whole large pizza and then like a couple of protein shakes, because I was just, like, work was just insanely busy. I was working on a couple of different projects, and also doing like the personal training, online coaching. So it really was an absolute eye opener as soon as I recognized, hold on a second,
Yeah.
there's more than
I
one way
think,
to do this.
yeah, and it says a lot. I think there's an element of stress involved with the whole meal plan thing, because you feel like you have to do it all the time. And as soon as you let go and you track a bit more flexibly, the stress is gone and you can kind of relax, and that reflects in your body as well. You just drop that stress, and and your body just, like, I don't know, responds to the lack of the stress of the meal plans.
And
But
I
yeah,
think it is the wrong message as well to send to people, because from people who, I don't want to sound egotistical, but for people who aren't in the know, so our clients, general day-to-day people, get the wrong message from it, because they're like, oh, these are the foods that I need to be eating to get the best results. So, so chicken breast I can eat, but because steak isn't on my plan, oh, that's obviously not good, so I can't eat that. And it starts to create these kind of, even if we've not discussed it, coach to client, they just instantly start to look at things and go, okay, well, I'm noticing that this isn't on there, and I'm noticing that this might be on there a lot more. So maybe there's a reason why this is more beneficial to my fat loss goals, muscle building goals, insert goal, than any other food source. And that's why now, initially, don't get me wrong, there's obviously a time and a place for a meal plan, I believe. If you are someone that has no structure surrounding food, someone that doesn't understand how food works or how to track it, I think having that initial period of like a week, 2 weeks, a month, like whatever that is with that individual client, I think that would be beneficial. But I think after that, the education and being able to teach someone about calories, macronutrients, because they can take it with them then.
Yeah, exactly. How to distribute your protein evenly throughout the day,
Mm-hmm.
how to not be hungry, not to just do all of your meals, all of your calories by 3 o'clock and not leave yourself with anything left for dinner. Just educating people. Yeah, like I say, I'm not really a big fan of meal plans, but I would do them for my clients if they really don't know how to eat properly, which a lot of people don't, and they just need a little bit of structure. So we go by, I give them the macros, and they have a meal plan. So if they are struggling, the meal plan is there. But if they want to go out with their friends or their family, which they should, then there's a macros there that you can stick to, to make your life a bit easier, to still achieve your goals and just be more adherent long term.
Yeah, I agree. I think the one thing that I would love to change as a fitness community is people's preconceived notions of what they have to do to get into shape. Because I cannot tell you, and you'll be the same, the amount of times I've had conversations with people that go along the lines of, oh, I want to lose X amount of weight, but I don't want to start until after X event or holiday, because, I'm going to be, I'm not going to be able to give my all to it. So therefore, there's no real point in me starting now, because I'm just going to like waste all of that time. And you're like, well, hold on a second. Like, now is a perfect example. We're coming up to Christmas, the festive season. Now, bar finances, really, there is no barrier to entry, because ultimately, and I had a call with someone the other day, and I'll use this as an example. If you are at a time in your life right now where it's difficult to manage, and you've got social events coming up to your eyeballs because it's December, ultimately, this is the best time for you to invest in coaching now, because anybody can do this when they've got no events coming up. Because and it wouldn't necessarily be healthy. You could implement something that was super strict like you and I did when we were competing, and you'd get results as long as you can stick to it for 12 weeks. But what happens after that? But going back to the conversation that I had, this guy said to me, he was like, look, we're coming up to Christmas. I'm going to be out. I'm going to be, doing lots of social things, eating, and it's like his favorite time of year. And I was like, totally understand all of what you've just said. And I relate to it because it's my favorite time of year. But in this example, imagine if you could now do all of that and also progress towards your goals. How would that sound? And he was like, if you can do that, sign me up. And that's the reality, is like, ultimately, I don't know why. Well, I suppose I can theorize that it's to do with the fact that for years we've been kind of force-fed these ideas about diets and, companies that will promote certain things, which then mean that everyone assumes that that's the only way to do it. So I suppose that's probably it. But I think it would be so cool for us to be able to change that as an industry. To just be like,
they just associate diets with constantly being restricted, but it doesn't have to be that way. There are ways of managing it. Like, you're always going to have life events, Christmas, then it's Easter, and then it's bank holidays, and then it's holidays, and then we go back to Christmas and Halloween and all of these things. These are all going to happen. There is no good time to start your fitness journey, but with a coach, you can manage those things better, so you can still achieve your goals. It might take a little bit longer, but you can still get there and still enjoy life and enjoy the holidays. But yeah, I think people just, they want a quick fix. But it's really lifestyle changes that are the most important thing long term, not this tea that's going to make you shit yourself, pretty much.
Yeah, exactly.
Mm.
That's a beautiful message to end it on, actually. Millie,
Yeah.
where can people find a little bit more about you?
So I'm on Instagram, obviously. X23 Coaching. It's a bit of a weird name, but it's because I like the X-Men and the women's body shape is X shape. Um, X23 Coaching, and I also just started my own little YouTube, which is well, there will just be some small videos on there as well, so
Hmm.
that's where you can catch me.
Amazing.
Yeah.
Everyone go check it out. I'll put all of the links in the description below.
Thank you very much. Pleasure chatting to you.
It's been great. Thanks for coming on.
You're welcome.